Members of the gallery, I declare open the ordinary monthly council meeting of Armidale Regional Council and invite you to stand for the affirmation which will be given by Councillor Bailey.
We, the Council of Armidale Region, declare that we will undertake the duties of the office of Councillor in the best interests of our community and faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in us to the best of our skill and judgment.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Deputy Mayor O'Brien to read the recognition of traditional owners.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. The Armidale Regional Council pays tribute to their love of land, love of people and love of culture.
Thank you. And the General Manager's statement in relation to live streaming, etc.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Please be seated.
That's better. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a reminder in relation to the live streaming of the council meeting this evening. This meeting is being audio and video recorded, and the recordings of the non-confidential parts of the meeting will be made available on the internet. No other persons are permitted to record the meeting unless specifically authorised to do so by council. Just in relation to mobile phones, could we ask that you turn yours, either turn them off or turn them to silent? Thank you.
I declare an interest in the DA in 10.2 from being involved in some discussions in that, so I'll be the motel development, correct? Yes.
Okay. Any other declarations, councillors? No? Yeah, mine is pecuniary, potential pecuniary, and I'll leave the room. Yours, Councillor Gladley?
The same.
Same, thank you. Item 5, confirmation of minutes. It's been drawn to my attention by, I think it was Councillor Robinson, that there are 3 inaccuracies in the minutes, and I will quickly go to each of them. The first is at page 5 of the minutes, where in fact Councillor Robinson gave the civic affirmation, not Councillor Morat, and acknowledgement of country was by Councillor Morat, not Councillor Robinson, so the minutes have been changed to reflect that. In relation to page 24 of the minutes, the item 17, matters of an urgent nature. For clarity, the minutes have been changed to read that Councillor O'Connor requested a matter to be heard. The Chair heard the request and ruled the matter not to be of an urgent nature. So that's how 7 reads, and the final one is page 25 of the minutes, resolution 189, and it presently reads that the recommendations of closed session be adopted, and the motion on being put to the vote was carried. I'm adding the following words because there was a division in the confidential session. So I'm adding the words, the motion on being put to the vote was carried on the casting vote of the Mayor. After voting was Councillors Bailey, Morat and Tiley for, and Councillors O'Brien, Robinson and O'Connor against. So if councillors are happy with those changes, I'd take a motion to adopt the minutes of the last council meeting.
Mr Mayor, can I just say that I have had it confirmed that in fact the minutes in relation to that urgency motion should include what I said and what appears on the live stream video, or, which is the nature of the motion that was put. I think it's fairly meaningless to have minutes that don't actually say what was ruled not urgent, especially given the issue about the dates. So I'd just like to put on notice my continued objection to the absence of that information on the minutes, and I will accordingly be voting against acceptance of those minutes in the form you've just announced.
Do you have the wording of your intended motion with you?
It's not an intended motion. It's a matter from... I don't have it with me, no, Mr Mayor.
You don't? Okay, well look, in that case I'm going to have to pursue the matter of adoption of the minutes. Is there someone prepared to move them with those changes? Do you have them there?
I've got them here. The words are that Council makes a submission by the closing date of May 7 on the New South Wales draft Clean Air Strategy, comma, requesting funds for firewood moisture meters and a demonstration project in the Armidale City to identify the costs and benefits of heating and home insulation options for our climate and collate and present case studies.
How are you going there?
Yes, sorry, I can give you a text if you like, if that would be easier.
Councillors, I'm happy that that is included. That was a matter that you raised, which I ruled wasn't of an urgent nature. So, are we okay to vote to adopt the minutes with all those changes that have been referred to and including your motion? Okay, we're happy? Thank you, Councillor Morat. Seconded Councillor O'Connor, I think. All those in favour, to the contrary, carried. No mayoral minute. We have notices of motion, and I think there's a motion coming from Councillor O'Brien.
Move a motion that the notices of motion were also authored by Councillor O'Connor and Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you. The motion is that the council note that the 9 notices of motion were authored by Councillors Robinson, O'Brien and O'Connor. And that's seconded somewhere. Seconded Councillor Robinson. Any opposition? Put the motion. All those in favour, to the contrary, carried. Item 7.1, borrowing strategy. As there's 3 authors, I'm looking at any of the 3 of you to move that.
Well, I don't think we need to move it since the General Manager's comments actually support what the motion is, so we'll just...
I'm sorry, we have an item on the business paper which needs to be dealt with. It needs to be either progressed...
I'll move it then.
It's been moved and seconded. Your motion, Councillor.
As I've just said, I believe the General Manager's comments are generally supportive, so I don't think we need to say anything else. Thank you.
Any other speakers? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour of the notice of motion? 3. Those against? 4. The 3 in favour were Councillors O'Connor, Robinson and O'Brien. I declare that motion lost. Number 7.2, Cities Power Partnership, on page 6. Councillor Robinson moving.
I think I'm moving.
I need a mover.
Yeah, I'll move it.
Councillor O'Connor's moving it, a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Robinson. Your motion, Councillor.
Look, I think that this is an opportunity. I'm quite happy, having moved it, to move also for its deferral to the next meeting. I do take on board what the General Manager has said about the time constraints of a membership of such a group. And I think it's more a machinery problem that we probably need to have these discussions privately with the General Manager in the circumstances where we are under a performance improvement order and there's pressure on our staff, we do have a dedicated sustainability officer, and I think if we can defer this matter to the next meeting and in the interim have some discussions about exactly what the quantity of time would be to secure a meaningful membership of this group, which in all events appears to be a very good group and something quite useful and probably time and cost saving for us in the long run. But I'm happy to move a deferral at this stage so that those discussions can occur.
Thank you. The seconder wish to speak?
No, I'll support Councillor O'Connor's move to defer it until the next meeting.
Thank
Pending
you.
discussions with the sustainability officer.
Thank you. Is there a speaker in opposition? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillors O'Connor, Robinson and O'Brien. Those against? 4 against. The motion's lost. 7.3.
Was that the deferral motion that was lost?
Pardon?
Was that the deferral
The
motion?
motion
that
is
was
printed
lost?
which you moved.
No, I moved for a deferral. I said
No, you
I'd like
didn't.
to defer.
I'm sorry. I accepted the motion on as printed on page 6, item 7.2.
Oh, right then. Well, whatever
Anyway,
you ask.
the matter's defeated. 7.3. Again, looking for a mover. Making submissions available to councillors in the community. I think Councillor Robinson. Yes. Is it seconded? It's seconded. Your motion, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. This is in some ways a difficult motion in the sense that we are expending time and effort putting policies on public exhibition, but we are not really engaging public interest. Today, for example, we're about to adopt 5 policies for which not a single submission was received. Last month, we adopted 6 policies after public exhibition, again without a single submission being received. And if we don't get the consultation right, cynics are going to say that we are just conducting a tick box exercise rather than genuine consulting. And I think this is critical for this month because the budget is going on display. And at the same time, we've also got 16 policies going on public display with the same closing date. And my concern, and this is one of the reasons why I really think we have to think about whether we can do this better, is that what's going to happen is these policies are going to go on public display for 28 days. And then if no councillors read the submissions, there'll be a mad rush of 3 or 4 days where we've got to read all the submissions, consider all the submissions, and that isn't really a good way of generating community interest and community engagement. So I'm quite happy to change the motion and say that instead of having items that they are uploaded ideally within a few days, we could say ideally within 2 weeks. And then in any public exhibition period, that means that there's only a very, very small amount of time that staff have 2 weeks to look at the submissions and quickly upload them. And if it's going to take more than 5 minutes, then they don't have to do it anyway. But I think the idea is that we really, really need to encourage our residents. We need to let them have their say, encourage the dialogue. And if we do it this way, then perhaps it will encourage residents to read the Your Say page and see what other people are saying. They'll know what's happening. And a good example of the failure of that process in the past was when we put the drought management policy on public display. And there were 3 submissions received, all which council didn't see until a long time afterwards. And also the ARA, for example, the Ratepayers Association, didn't even know it was on public exhibition. So we have to get the public engagement right so that people can have their say. So unless it's going to cost a major amount of money, and I know I could do it in 5-10 minutes, probably only half an hour for the whole period. So let's think of the advantages of this system and let's see if there's some way we can do it to improve our community engagement. And this, I think, is going to be critical for the display of the budget because we've got lots and lots of people really interested in our budget and our finances. And so let's engage the community and let's do what we can to make sure we make the decisions on their behalf. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson, my understanding is that on line 2 of your motion, ideally within 2 weeks instead of ideally within a few days, is the seconder agreeable?
Yes.
Seconders agreeable? Seconder wish to speak?
Yeah, I guess I've actually got a question, and that is, would it not be possible for councillors, and maybe only councillors, to have a code access to the submission box so that we can, if we're interested, we can get in and see them as they arrive? Is there any, I suppose this question is directed to the General Manager, is there any theoretical or governance issue with that happening, which would be a cheaper way of achieving the same end?
Would you like to answer that?
Mr Mayor, just thinking off the top of my head, I'd see a number of issues with that. I think the governance issues that you refer to straight up are that, and we've almost then got a dilution of our particular roles in terms of the role of the staff and the role of the council. But more broadly, perhaps just to add, while I've got the floor, just to add to the commentary that is part of the notice of motion. The other issue to be considered by council essentially is opportunity cost. We can do anything here, but what I want to make really clear is that if we're going to do things like that, reading submissions and putting them up within a couple of days or a couple of weeks or whatever it might be, it comes at the expense of a number of other issues that we're currently working to. And just while I'm there, and it will take more than 5 minutes to do it, because what we have to remember is that we've got to read them thoroughly and make sure that what's actually going up in the public domain is in fact appropriate and there's not bad language in it. I mean, in the middle of a 15-page submission there could be an up yours clause or something. So we need to be really sure that what's going up is fit for public consumption, and if we don't have the time to spend to actually do that and do that properly, then we open not only ourselves but the council and the public more broadly up to things that they just don't need to be privy to. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. You've spoken to, you've got a right. Well, just a second. I need to know whether Councillor O'Connor's concluded her seconding.
I don't want to add anything to what Councillor Robinson
thank you. Question, Councillor Robinson.
In the case of a submission box which was private, then council staff wouldn't have to read anything. Is that not correct? And that was, I think, what Councillor O'Connor was suggesting, that it's a private submission box that only councillors would have access to.
Mr Mayor, I think asked and answered, but I just wouldn't have thought that would be an appropriate way to be attempting to run our business.
Are the speakers against? Therefore,
I just want to ask a quick question, just so I've got this clear in my mind. So we put this out to the public, and the public don't put a submission back in. I would presume that means the public are happy with it. So from all of these ones that we've had out recently, there's been no submissions from the public. Why does this have to be a key factor in it when we haven't been getting any submissions anyway? I'm a little bit curious about that, but anyway.
I'll take that as speaking against. It's a rhetorical question. Is there another speaker for? Do you need a right of reply, Councillor Robinson?
No, I'll pass, thank you.
Thank you. I put the motion as printed. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3. Councillors O'Connor, Robinson and O'Brien. Those against? 4. Declare the motion lost. 7.4 on page 9. Request help Minister's performance in order. Before I call for a mover of this, I sent you all this morning a letter from the Minister wherein she detailed the significant number of grants that the Council has received in recent times. I believe under those circumstances there's little point in pursuing this matter, but it's up to anybody to move it if they wish.
Yeah, I do wish to move it. I have read the letter and also...
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor's the mover. Is there a seconder? Councillor O'Brien, your motion, Councillor.
Well, thank you. No, I've read the Minister's letter and with great interest, actually, and I note that that is a list of special one-off funding in relation to drought, bushfire, resilience, things related to natural disasters, which you would expect of the state government and which would apply across the board to all councils affected by those natural disasters. I don't want to term a forced merger as a natural disaster, but it does seem to have had some adverse financial impacts, and we're now trying as hard as we can to deal with the financial impacts that we have, which has put us into a situation of extreme resource shortfall, both financially and with staff. And I think this meeting so far is an ample demonstration of the fact that even what would otherwise be quite sensible requests, we just don't have the resources for, given the pressure on this council at this particular time in relation to our current financial circumstance, which is not exclusively related to drought and bushfire. And a lot of the items that the Minister has identified, council's a conduit for money going to members of the community, but it isn't in all of those items the final recipient of that largesse, if you want to call it that. So I believe that we do need some additional resourcing to help us deal with the performance improvement order, which is extensive and which we've been told has to be prioritised. I don't have an argument with that, really. The $1.4 million that we've costed that out has meant that anything that councillors want to achieve, even these simple little noms for procedural, clarity or making our job a bit easier, have all been rejected. And I understand why. We don't want to put extra pressure on the staff, and I certainly don't want to do that either. But I don't think it would hurt for us to pass this motion and let the Minister know that, if some small additional resourcing could be given from the state government to help us meet the resourcing needs of the PI, the performance improvement order that has been put upon us. There's nothing objectionable, crazy or harsh in doing that, and it simply lets the Minister know that our priorities as councillors still lie with our community. Oh, look at me, I'm only halfway through, but I'm not. I'm going to finish there. So that's why I think it's a pretty simple motion, and I would, just one letter, it's not a big deal. Thank you.
I should clarify the letter I referred to earlier was about cost shifting, and it was your motion which was successful, 24th of March meeting. Councillor O'Brien has seconded. Do you wish to speak?
First of all, let it be clear that we really do understand the dire situation we're in, and it is with that in mind that we move this motion. We're very grateful for the work that the General Manager and the staff have done to help us get out of this situation, and for the support and help that they've given us and that we've also given each other, and there's no kind of willingness here or a wish to kind of create any difficulties for anyone. But $1.4 million for a performance audit taken out of our budget is a hell of a lot. And since the councillors here spent a great deal of time asking assistance so that we wouldn't get into the mess we're in, and were ignored for many, many months, years, really, I don't think it would hurt to actually ask for assistance. We have fought hard and strong to get to where we are now, and we have a really good General Manager and good council. And we're heading in the right direction, but does it hurt to ask for help? This could really help us with a whole lot of administrative things that we can't do now because everything's about the performance improvement order and getting out of this mess. What does it hurt to actually ask for help? It doesn't hurt anybody. Thank you.
Is there a speaker against? No speakers against. Therefore, no right of reply. Put the motion 7.4 on page 9. Those in favour? Councillors O'Connor, Robinson and O'Brien against. 4 against. The motion's lost. 7.5, waiving of fees and charges, exceptional circumstances. A mover?
I'll
Councillor
move
O'Brien moving this one. Is it seconded? It's seconded by Councillor Robinson. Your motion, Councillor.
Oh, sorry. This isn't to create greater expense or to waive fees that we have to pay now or to create a greater debt. This isn't for circumstances like, for example, I think it's coming before us today, for emergencies. I think we're going for one for covering the cost of a petrol for the delivery of hay today, isn't that today? Situations like that where we're able to act flexibly and with care for those who are generous to the community, instead of having to put it up for public exhibition for a month or so, to actually have the flexibility within council to waive those fees when people are in hardship or when there is emergency, which there has been a lot lately. It's to give us some flexibility to, I suppose, respond to community in times of need without having to do all the red tape every single time we have to do it. So I think it's fairly simple and straightforward, and I commend this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson as seconder.
Oh.
Yes, I support exactly what Councillor O'Brien has said. This is not a motion about spending any money. All it is allowing council flexibility. Should something happen in the future where we need to waive fees and charges, that we can do it after the approval of a full council meeting and without the difficulty of another 28 days of public exhibition. It's just basically streamlining a process at council's discretion so that we can respond quicker to a difficulty or an emergency. And I hope we all agree that streamlining processes and making ourselves more efficient would be a good idea.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against? No speakers against. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Councillors O'Connor, Robinson and O'Brien. Those against? 4 against. The motion's lost. 7.6, water charges and policy. On page 12.
I'd like to defer this until after the community consultation. Thank you.
Well, you can't do that without the council resolution. Is the council of a mind to defer? I would need a motion.
I'll move.
Your move is a procedural motion. Is there a seconder? Been moved by Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favour? 3. Councillors O'Connor, Robinson and O'Brien. Those against? The matter is not deferred. It will be dealt with now. Your motion, Councillor. Sorry, I'm needing a mover.
Just withdraw it.
No mover. Okay, the motion lapses for want of a mover. 7.7, live streaming. Looking for a mover on page 13. Councillor O'Brien moving. Seconder, Councillor Robinson. Your motion, Councillor O'Brien.
Ask a question first. Is it a difficult thing to do? Is it more expensive? Is it? I mean, I suppose I want to hear if there's a problem to do it.
The General Manager, would you like to perhaps speak to your comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No additional cost. In terms of process, it would, as stated there, we just need to change the code of meeting practice to reflect the change, put it out on public exhibition for the 28 days, and then come back and if it gets up, the code of meeting practice can be changed. My suggestion would be that code of meeting practice has got to be renewed with the new council after September. We'd be looking to do that at the first meeting or the second meeting at the very latest. So I'd suggest letting it run through to then, but otherwise, if this gets up tonight, we could change that, go out on public exhibition. It'd be effective probably from July, maybe August.
Question, Councillor Robinson?
Is this actually in the code of meeting practice? I mean, I thought that the have your say section was now excised from the code of our meetings, and therefore wasn't in the code of meeting practice. So, and there was nothing about in our documents to say whether it should be streamed or not, is there? I mean, that was my understanding when we approved it, that there was nothing in it to say that we could or we couldn't stream it, and it was, and because it was decoupled, it wasn't relevant, and that we could do. Yeah, it was at our discretion.
You've asked the question. Can someone take that question?
Yeah, no, I've got it, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
sure.
Yeah, no, it's been. I mean, the public forum section is still included in the code of meeting practice. It just states that it's actually been decoupled from the meeting process entirely. I mean, council meetings are formally about debate and decision-making forums, not so much talking forums, and that was one of the reasons why the Office of Local Government back in 2018 suggested that decoupling, or taking public forum out of the council agenda process, but it's still part of the process, just not part of the meeting process, and the code of meeting practice reflects that.
And does it say whether it should or should not be live streamed?
No, it doesn't say that. But it's not part. We live stream our meetings, and that's what the code of meeting practice refers to. We live stream our council meetings. It's silent on what happens with the public forum.
So do we need
The relevant clause is 4.1 in the code. Okay.
Which says,
Right, okay, so we have Councillor O'Brien yet to speak to her motion.
I agree with former Mayor Dr. Baisdorf about the importance of transparency and how it will be kind of odd for people to follow the whole debate with only not seeing that the community input. So I'm pro this, but I'm understanding that this is maybe a difficult thing to do now, given that the council's only a few months to run. I would still support that so we'd have to do it on public display and everything again.
Excuse me, I haven't recognised you. Are you finished your introductory speech? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, well, the seconder was Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, all I would say is if it doesn't specifically say in our code of meeting practice that it should not, that the have your say segment should not be live streamed, then it is at our discretion, and I'm not quite sure, I do not quite yet understand why we'd have to put it on public display, given the circumstances. So, I mean, I'd certainly like a better explanation of that, and that's the only thing I'd like to say. If it is our discretion, then certainly and it's not going to be difficult or awkward, then let's do it.
Thank you, Councillor. The fact is that the council meetings are live streamed. The have your say is not part of the council meeting and it's therefore not live streamed. Anyway, that's your motion. You've had a speaker for, a seconder spoken for. Is there a speaker in opposition?
Can I just put 20 cents worth in?
Opposition speaking? Yep.
Opposition speaking here. I think we've only adopted this, was it last meeting that was the first time we put this into practice? Is that correct? So we've adopted it to try it, and we're trying to change it already. What say we give it a crack for the next couple of meetings, and then the new council coming in will have some sort of a yardstick to work off whether it's going to work or not, because I don't think we've really given enough time to see if it's going to be all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Speaker for. Right of reply, Councillor O'Brien. Do you need it? You're speaking for? Sorry.
I just wanted to say I think this has actually been a little bit of a slip. I don't think any of us realised that we were voting when we changed the code of meeting practice to decouple these two public have your say sessions, if you like. One of them, the have your say section, is actually very much related to the council debate and on the day, because speakers cannot speak in the have your say segment other than to an item already in the agenda. So in my view, there's good sense for us just exercising a discretion to reinstate live streaming for that portion. And, you know, I don't have a problem with the public forums being given not being live streamed for a little while. But to me, let's live stream it. I mean, we're supposed to be here for transparency and re-establishing a connection with the community. A lot of people do watch the live streaming; they're interested in it, and I just don't see why we would. I don't think we deliberately cancelled the live streaming. We just didn't realise that would be a consequence of decoupling the 15-minute fora items and the have your say. And so, just to reinstate, some live streaming, I think shouldn't even require public exhibition. I wouldn't have thought, but even if it does, it's worth doing. It doesn't stop the new council from, doing whatever it does in relation to this.
Thank you, Councillor. Speaker against? Right of reply, Councillor O'Brien. No right of reply needed. I put the motion on page 13. Those in favour? Councillors Robinson, O'Brien and O'Connor. Those against? 4 against. The motion's lost. 7.8. The GM's performance criteria.
I'd like to move a motion or just have this item withdrawn. I don't think there's any dissent from the other movers.
I'm hearing a motion that the matter be withdrawn. Is that seconded? Seconded by Councillor O'Brien. I don't think it needs debate. It's procedural. Therefore, put the motion. All those in favour? To the contrary, carried. Thank you, councillors. And the final notice of motion is on page 17, 7.9, National Air Quality Standards.
Yeah, I'd like to withdraw that as well for the moment.
You're moving it be withdrawn, and it's seconded that it be withdrawn. Moving Councillors Robinson and O'Connor. No opposition. Put the motion. All those in favour of withdrawal. It's carried unanimously. Moving now to the next series items under item 8. And I'm going to call these items. So loud yes if you wish to speak to an item, please. Item 8.1, rescinding of council policies. 8.2, minor policy updates. 8.3, feedback and complaints management policy, unreasonable customer conduct behaviour. 8.4, constitutional referendum question.
I'd just like to ask a question.
On 8.4. 8.5, public exhibition of private works policy. 8.6, public exhibition of management of road reserves policy. No, that's not up yet, isn't it? I thought that was 8.8. Yeah, you're jumping the gun. So where was I up to? 8.5, public exhibition of private works policy. 8.6, public exhibition of management of road reserves policy. 8.7, property addressing and naming our roads and places policy. Councillor O'Connor calling 8.7. And 8.8 we obviously need to call. It's draft operational plan and budget, which is going to be introduced by a director. So we can adopt by consent. I'll take a motion to adopt by consent all except 8, 4, 7 and 8.
I'm happy to move that motion.
I think Councillor Gallatley was in first, and then Councillor O'Connor moved and seconded to adopt those uncalled items. All those in favour? To the contrary, I think it's carried unanimously. Yes. 8.4, Councillor Robinson, a question on page 28.
Yeah, my main question is simply that this would have been a great opportunity to consult the community about demerger and what Glenn wanted as far as that was concerned. And just confirming it's definitely too late to do that, since there seems to be a lot of going forward on it. a lot of discussion, and maybe if there was any way we could encourage people to look at that as well, it would be really
I'm
useful.
sorry,
and
your mic
beneficial
wasn't
for
on
them.
when you started. To look at what, councillor? I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Look at whether there are a majority of people in our community who would like to go forward with a demerger, since there is certainly a lot of people in Gara who are of that opinion. And if there was any way we could pursue that at the same time, it would solve a lot of problems and make sure that we were acting in the best interest of our community.
The council resolved some time ago to ask the constitutional referendum question. I think it's a bit late in the day to be trying to amend that question, Mr. GM.
Absolutely too late, Mr Mayor.
You.
And I don't know that it's anything that's actually been formally brought to the council, Mr Mayor, for any form of discussion.
I guess the council will see the cases for and against the proposition before election day. Thank you. So can I have a mover to adopt 8.4 officers' recommendation? Councillor Robinson, seconded. Councillor O'Connor. No opposition. Put the motion. All those in favour. To the contrary, carried. 8.7 property addressing. Councillor O'Connor has a question.
Yeah, my question is that, I totally support the policy for exhibition. My question relates to the safety issue, the safety issue related to this policy. And because this is being live streamed, it's a very important matter, I think, for the community to understand that one of the underlying purposes of this policy is to ensure that there's no confusion over addresses, so that when emergency services are called to an address, it's not one of two similar sounding or one of several similar sounding addresses. And I am aware that we have a number of split roads still in this LGA where there are two separate access points for the same road. And the Geographical Names Board actually, I'm advised, doesn't allow us to designate them by cardinal points on the compass. For example, Tanglewood Road and Tanglewood Road.
I need you to ask a question, please.
Yeah, so my question is, can I be assured that this safety aspect will be pursued, in due course? I'm not putting any time frame around it, so that where we do have confusing existing road names, and the example comes to mind of Tanglewood Road, but there are a number of other ones in the same circumstance. Can we be assured that this is going to be progressed?
Thank you. Nice, short, sharp questions are the order of the day, if we can, please. Would that be directed to the author of the report, perhaps, Mr. General Manager? Mr. Hallman, looking at you, please, to address that question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll attempt to address that question. Council in its daily activities tries to alleviate or rectify road addressing, rural addressing and street addressing issues as they arise. And generally they're brought back to the elected members for a resolution and going out on public exhibition if that involves renaming a road. Geographical Names Board don't have a hard and fast rule about fixing roads that are similar, but their guidelines do detail how those duplications should be fixed. So our one person that does street addressing is looking at that on a daily basis.
Thank you, Mr. Hallman. So I'll take a motion to adopt the recommendation under 8.7. It's Councillor Robinson, Councillor O'Connor. No opposition. Put the motion. All those in favour. To the contrary, carried. We now come to definitely the most important item on our agenda today, to resolve to put on public exhibition the draft operational plan and budget for the next financial year. This is probably one of the most important tasks of any council. And I'm going to call upon Director of Organisational and Corporate Services, Arissa Rako-Malira, to introduce the report item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and if it's okay with you, I would like to invite our Manager of Financial Services, Kelly Stidworthy. Kelly's team and across the organisation have put a lot of work and effort into developing this operational plan and budget, and I would be very pleased if she could present it on behalf of the organisation.
Excellent. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Just a brief introduction to this report today. So I'm just pleased to recommend to Council the draft operational plan and budget 2021-2022. The suite of documents Council is being requested to endorse today for public exhibition purposes includes the draft operational plan and budget, revenue policy and the fees and charges document. Council is also being asked to endorse a proposed 4-year harmonisation implementation framework, which is outlined in the revenue policy. And if endorsed, the documents and the proposed rates harmonisation framework will be placed on public exhibition as required by the Local Government Act for a period of 28 days. The committee will be encouraged to have their say on the draft operational plan and budget, including the rates harmonisation framework, until Thursday the 24th of June 2021. Following the public exhibition period, the submissions will be reviewed and reported back to Council at a public meeting date, with that to be determined, but that will occur prior to 30th of June or on 30th of June 2021. Council set a budget that seeks to strike a balance between remaining fiscally responsible and maintaining and meeting standards of service delivery that ensure public services and infrastructure are maintained at acceptable levels. As noted in the report, the budget challenges have included the impacts from COVID-19, growing asset renewal backlogs, resourcing and meeting the requirements of the performance improvement order, and implementation of rates harmonisation. Despite the challenges, a modest surplus budget position has been achieved through the forecast, although the forecast for unrestricted cash remains unchanged. And as Council is aware from the extent of items included in the deferred and deleted budget items list included with the report, this position will require strong financial management to maintain and achieved. And it will be critical to ensure that the outlook for unrestricted cash remains unchanged throughout the 21-22 financial year. Council was also successful in receiving approval from IPART to make the existing temporary special rate variation permanent. The special rate variation will mean that our rates income remains consistent with previous levels, and it is simply replacing the expired SRV from the Armidale Demerit Council. IPART's SRV instrument requires Council to improve its financial sustainability, manage the infrastructure backlog and maintain service levels in line with the applications submitted, and Council is also required to report on the actual results each year in its annual report. The draft operational plan and budget 2021-2022 is the first step of a long and disciplined road in maintaining levels of service to the community and improving Council's financial position. It would be appreciated if these comments could be added to the minutes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Chief Financial Officer Kelly. I want to say at the outset on behalf of my councillor colleagues who met with you and senior staff on 5 separate occasions workshopping our budget, I want to acknowledge that you and your team have worked jolly hard under very difficult circumstances. We've never had a performance improvement order before. We've never had a financial controller or a set of financial controls, and this budget, from my experience, is probably one of the toughest that I've ever seen, and I'm sure that applies to you too. So on behalf of my colleagues, we thank you very much. We're putting it out on exhibition now, hoping for good feedback. My personal view is it's a really good budget and it deserves support. So thank you very much. Would someone like to move the recommendations in Councillor Bailey in 5 parts, A, B, C, D and E, under item 8.8, and you're happy to second it? Thank you, Councillor Robinson. I think it's important to note that we are putting out an exhibition, and if we have in our minds perhaps we might like to change a bit here and there, we can do that at the end of the consultation process. So, do we need to debate? If not, I'll put the motion for adoption. And thank you again, Kelly. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. We now We now move to the 9 series, and first one I'm calling, of course, 9.1, update and alterations to parking time limits in the CBD. Armidale Airside Business Park, the cul-de-sac naming. I think we should call that, I'll call it, 9.3, the Armidale Airside Business Park adoption of agreed vision, etc.
I'd like to call that.
Councillor O'Connor's calling 9.3. 9.4, update Moore Street decked car park. 9.5 cash and investment report. 9.6 I think needs to be called. I'll call it. 9.7 Mayor and Councillor remuneration. 9.8 Country Gymnastics Championships. 9.9 the request for loan guarantee the Gymnastics Club. 9.10 public exhibition of procurement policy. 9.11 public exhibition of debt recovery and hardship policies. 9.12 sorry, Councillor O'Brien. 9.11 me pun? It wasn't called. It wasn't called. Righto. 9.12 investment policy for adoption. So I'll take a motion to adopt all except 9, 2, 3 and 4, 6 and 11. 9, 2, 3 and 4, 6 and 11. Adopting everything else, a motion, Councillor Robinson, seconded. I have called. No, you called 10. Well, you didn't say yes. How am I supposed to hear? Dear oh dear. Okay, so we'll go back again. We'll start again. We are moving to adopt by consent 9.1, 9.5, 9.7, 9.8, 9.9 and 9.12. It's been moved by Councillor Galatly, seconded somewhere. Councillor Morat, all those in favour, to the contrary, carried unanimously. 9.2, the Airside Business Park. That's on page 40. I call this, councillors, because if you see on the report, there's a list of 12 names, and at the present time we need 2 names, and I felt it probably prudent for us to whittle down to 2 or 3 the names that we suggest for those two items on page 41. If we just leave 12, we're not giving a great deal of direction to our staff as to how we want them named. Would you like to comment on that, Mr. General Manager? Is that necessary, or am I out of order?
I think the meeting's in your hands, Mr. Mayor. I think either way we loud and clear understand the direction of council, but if it would help to order them, happy for you to do so.
Well, I'm not quite finished. In that case, I'm prepared to move from the chair the officer's recommendation with the 12 names, and then a second part which says that council's preferred priorities of these names in stage 2 be 1, 2 and 3 above. Yes, because, well, if you read what they've done, they're obviously standouts. World War II Spitfire pilots, 2 of them, and the Avro Ensign flight. But is there someone prepared to second that, for starters, to formalise things? Or Councillor Galatly? It's seconded by Councillor. You have a question, councillor?
Yeah, I have a question, and that is that I don't know what number 4. I presume that's a female, a woman.
No, it's not.
It's not. It's a man. Okay, so we've got 12 male names, and I don't believe that there's been no females associated with the airport. And I think, in view of
Thank you. That's not really a question; it's a statement.
Well, it is.
Okay, thank you.
I'm disappointed that there's no women up there.
You've said what you wanted to say. I accept that. Do we need to debate this? No. Are we all?
Are we debating that? To get
I'm asking whether we need to debate what's on the screen, which is the recommendation, and we've nominated 3 names as our highest priority.
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. I intend to put the motion if there's no opposition. All those in favour? To the contrary? I think it's carried, but I don't know whether it's unanimous. I'll do it again. Those in favour? Thank you. It's carried unanimously. Councillor O'Connor, 9.3, are you called?
Sorry, I would very much like to, support and congratulate the authors for this report. There's just one suggested amendment in the report. I don't.
Would you? I'm looking for someone to move a motion, and it's your call.
Yeah, I'm happy to move the motion.
You're moving the recommendation on page 44. Thank you.
With a suggested amendment.
Okay, you might indicate that.
And the suggested amendment, and I don't think it's controversial, and that is that at page 45 of the agenda, under the words, for item 9.3, under the words airport vision, the first line suggests that the airport vision is that it be a thoroughfare, and I was hoping that after the word thoroughfare we would add and destination, because I think the vision has been that this airport precinct be.
Let's get this into some form of a motion. Those words aren't included in the officer's recommendation, and you've dragged a few words out of the body of the report. Can you tell me how you might like to include that in the motion?
Yeah, I can tell you that. Excuse me. That endorses the agreed vision that Council endorses the agreed vision, purpose and objectives provided in this report.
Slowly. The Council endorses the agreed vision.
And includes the words.
The Council endorses the agreed vision and includes the words.
And destination.
And visible thoroughfare and destination.
That's correct. I'm just trying after.
Where's that, Councillor? Please, is that in the recommendation?
Well, I'm getting to it, but Councillor Bailey's obviously very keen on this amendment too, because where the first subtopic in the officer's report is vision, which
need you to articulate an addition to your motion, please.
I'm right. I'm doing it, but I was interrupted by my colleague, and I'm now trying to get back to it.
Let's continue.
That Council endorses the agreed vision and includes the words and destination after the words. So if you delete after the words visible thoroughfare, on in the first line of vision on page 45 of the agenda.
Yep, well done.
Do you want me to speak to that?
Looking to see whether we've got a seconder. No, it's not an amendment. It'll be part 4 of the motion, as it's Councillor O'Connor's motion. I'm looking at, if you can scroll up to tell me whether we've got a seconder.
It's actually number 1.
We haven't got a seconder. Pipun? It's seconded by Councillor Robinson.
That would be an amendment to item 1 in the officer's recommendation, that Council 1 / endorses the agreed vision, purpose and objectives provided in this report, and adds.
Yeah, so to item 1, you add "and that council," etc. Just make it all one sentence.
Yep.
Okay. You got that? Good, thank you. Right, it's your motion if you need to speak to it.
Look, all I wanted to say is that I think from day one, the idea of the airport has been that we would create a point of difference to other airports in that, and I think that's fully agreed that this would be, the wording is thoroughfare, but I think we've also always believed that the airport would be a destination in itself to attract tourism and people to stop and in some way remediate the problem that Armidale has had ever since the bypass was put around Armidale, so that it becomes a destination in order to attract people to travelling on the New England Highway to stop at the airport. And the reason I think it's very important to have this in the vision statement is that if we don't have it there, there will be a sense that the airport is simply for transport, and the airport business park is simply for the individual businesses as a collective. But I think the original vision from day one was to stop traffic, to draw people to that precinct. And so in the case that you might have two competing or someone offering to buy a block or to invest there, if they add to their offering something that would be a draw card to bring people to the airport and the business park, that would be a positive for them. And I think it should be, included in the marketing vision that the airport is envisioned to be a destination both for travellers and for people living in our region. That's all.
Thank you. I'm not going to give you the offer to speak second. I don't think there's any opposition. Is there any opposition? Thank you. Can we put the motion? We can. I put the motion with that amendment, with that addition on item 1. All those in favour? To the contrary, carried unanimously. Well done, Councillor O'Connor. It's to you again on item 9.4, the Moore Street Deck car park. Your question is?
The question is, how much would it cost us, and why is it not possible for us? What is the thinking about us not contemplating taking on that lease of the car park? It was I think we originally had it as a leased car park back before the original lease. And I, for one, have been dreaming of the day in 2021 when that lease would expire and council could be more proactive about, a range of uses for that space.
General Manager, can you take that question, please? I imagine the answer is financial.
I'm happy to have a go at it, but I might need Ambrose to bail me out at some point. Essentially, cost, I think, in the first instance, I think the cost of the lease is probably in that realm of sort of 130 to 180,000 per year. So that's obviously an impediment for council in its current position. Current financial position. I think also that current car park acts as for one of my terminology, but an overflow car park for the Richardson's arcade there, and was originally part of their development application. Now, Ambrose might be able to correct me on that, but that's my understanding, and they need it as part of their development application and approval in terms of parking. So that I think they're probably the two, and we're just really not in a position where we can take it on.
Okay. Is someone prepared to move the recommendation 9.4?
Yeah, I'll move it, but I'd also like to make a quick comment, if that's okay.
Yeah, well, I think Councillor Bailey was in first to move, and I'll take you as the seconder. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Bailey? No? Reserve right. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Robinson?
I was just wanting to say, while I believe this is the only option we have at the moment, the reason that this car park is being leased by the Plaza is to meet the development requirements for parking spaces. And if at some future date we found that we could improve the amenity of that area, or maybe make it more of a sense of place and a connection between the creek lands and the mall, then that would be an excellent idea, and that we could probably still do that by negotiation with the developer, even though it's under a 20-year lease, and just expressing my sentiments that when the time is right for this to happen, I hope it will. But given that qualification, I'm happy to second it.
Thank you, councillor. Is there any opposition? Put the motion.
There is. I'm going to vote against it because I'm just so devastated that. Sorry, do you want to hear me now?
Didn't?
Speaking against.
Oh, you didn't. You asked a question. You weren't speaking.
Oh.
Fine distinction. If you're speaking against them, that's okay.
Yeah, regretfully, I won't be supporting it because I'm devastated that this has come upon us without much discussion, and that we're not able to re-secure that lease into council's own hands. It's public space owned by the Department of Lands. I think it's something that council should be in control of, and 20 years is a long time to delay, all the planning options that are so badly needed in terms of placemaking and creating connectivity between the CBD and the Creeklands. So I'm terribly disappointed. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Speaker 4. Right of reply? No right of reply? No. I'll put the motion, which is as printed on page 49. Those in favour? To the contrary, Councillor, it's 2 against, I think. Yes, Councillor O'Connor and Councillor O'Brien were against, 5 in favour. I called 9.6. I move the officer's recommendation first of all. Is there a seconder? This is the third quarterly budget review. Councillor Morat, thank you. I simply want to highlight, if people didn't already recognise it, that we've had a further improvement in our general fund budget in the third quarter. You recall we improved to the tune of 2.2, I think that was consolidated at the 31st of December. A further, albeit slight, improvement in our working fund surplus from 2.9 to 3 million. We're getting there. It's a long haul, but we're getting there. And the message I want to give is to our staff, to again thank them for all their efforts in terms of helping us achieve this financial turnaround. So with that, I think I can put the motion. Can I? Yes, all those in favour? To the contrary, cap. Next one call was Councillor O'Brien, 9.10, public exhibition of procurement policy. Page 77.
For this, I really want to just thank the General Manager and the staff very much for having a policy that encourages the use of local businesses, including Aboriginal businesses. This is so important to stimulate the local economy, but it's also has its impact in so many ways in terms of population growth, mental health, crime, a whole list of things. When you ensure that your local community comes first when it comes to choosing workers, the impact is, it's phenomenal. So I wanted to thank the General Manager very much for listening. It's actually was my greatest wish when I got on council that there would be a policy like this, and I just commend this onto public exhibition and for others to look at it. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. You got in without me getting a motion out of you, so you're moving that, of course. Thank you.
Yes,
and it's seconded somewhere. Councillor Morat. I don't think there'll be opposition. No. All
Mr.
those
Mayor,
in
could I just ask a question, please?
Sure.
Could I ask a question of the General Manager that he gives an undertaking that we do a seminar within the next quarter on the new procurement policy for council, so that we can invite business in and explain the new procurement and how they can, how people can do business with council.
Mr. GM.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure Kelly would be really happy to run that. Thank you. No, we can do that, Mr Mayor, absolutely.
Yep. Okay, that's doable. Thank you. It's at 3 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so 9:10. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? To the contrary, I think it's carried. I think there were 2 against. No, just a bit. I'll go again. Those in favour of 9:10. Carried unanimously. Thank you. 9:11. Again, Councillor O'Brien, and I'm going to look for a motion before you talk this time. It's on page 81, Debt Recovery and Hardship Policy.
Of the General Manager. Is this the one that's being referred to the Community Wellbeing Committee? Or yes. It is. Thank you. I will be the mover of this motion.
You're moving the recommendation on page 81. Is it seconded, Councillor Robinson? Your motion, Councillor.
Yes. With the number of hardships we've had in the last couple of years, from fires to drought to mice to locusts. Have we had locusts yet? No. Okay, not yet. Okay. I wanted to, yes, we've had, the community have had a pretty difficult time, and I think it's really important that we have a policy that responds to people in need, that council is there for the community, not just the community when they're having the good times, but when they're going through some terrible times. And I think that the council debt recovery policy has been a very hard one. I've heard this from many, many people before. It's more I suppose the lawyers come in pretty quickly when people are having difficulty. There's still a little bit of work to be done on this, and I thank you very much for putting it out to the committee that's used to dealing in this area for more, for advice. But thank you very much again, General Manager, for putting this on your agenda. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder need to speak?
No, I'll look forward to reviewing it at the Community Wellbeing Committee tomorrow. Thank you.
No opposition? Put the motion. All those in favour? To the contrary, carried. Moving on to there's 10 series. There's 18 of them here, so nice and loud if you wish to speak, please. Approval of DA for the child centre. It's Councillor Gallatley. It's called number 10.1. 10.2, the DA, the motel development, RSL development. 10, Councillor Bailey. 10.3, service station construction, the consent modification. 10.4, interim actions on air quality. 10.5, the Malpas Dam upgrade assessment report. 10.6, local roads and community infrastructure phase 1 reallocation of projects. 10.7, policy for food vans. 10. Thank you. Yes, I'll put O for O'Connor. 10.8, public exhibition events on public roads policy. 10.9, public exhibition of mall market operations policy. 10.10, public exhibition of grazing permits on road reserves policy. 10.11, public exhibition of road closure Mills Road. 10.12, public. 10.11, that's Councillor Bailey. 10.12, public exhibition of planning proposal, LEP amendments policy. 10.13, public exhibition of water supply policy. 10.14, public exhibition of draft reduction of water consumption charges due to undetectable leakage policy. 10.15, public exhibition of urban watercourse re-veg policy. 10.16, public exhibition aquatic centres patron code of conduct. 10.17, gates and stock grids on council roads. And 10.18, correspondence report. We'll have to call that because they're seeking a decision from council. So Okay, I'll call that. So we're going to adopt by consent all items other than 10.1, 10.2, 10.5, 10.7, 10.11 and 10.18. A mover to that effect. Thank you, Councillor Morat and Councillor Robinson. Adopting all the others by consent. Those in favour? To the contrary, carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. 10.1, the Guyra Centre-Based Childcare Facility, page 88, called by Councillor Gallatley. Yep.
No.
I'm looking for a motion to commence unless you have a question.
I am actually speaking against this, so does that go to Peter to move it, and then I go against it? How does that work?
Yeah. Councillor Bailey moving the officer's recommendation, is that correct?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Which is on page 91 in two parts. So it's moved. Is there a seconder? Oh, yes, you're not seconding. No, is there a seconder to the motion of Councillor Bailey? I'll second it from the chair for discussion purposes. Your motion, Councillor.
Mr Mayor, I think we're in the devil in the deep blue sea situation. I'm well aware of the challenges that we are facing, but to potentially long term leave Guyra without a site for a new preschool, I think would be a retrograde step. We've heard two impassioned pleas to move forward for the creation of a new Guyra preschool. We've had assurances from the hard-working director of the preschool that she is confident that they can manage the set down and pick up of children at the preschool. And I think we need to show confidence in the Guyra community. It's an expanded facility. If we don't do it, we'll sentence Guyra to have a baby preschool in an old building whilst we gin around trying to find somewhere that's appropriate. I've tried to open up discussions with Guyra Central School. That didn't work. I've spoken to numerous people, and I spent a fair bit of time in Guyra, and we've yet to find an appropriate facility. This is an appropriate facility. Guyra is moving forward, and we've got to give face to the Guyra community and the Guyra young people by approving the preschool. I'm well aware of the challenge we face for the operator of the truck business and the repair business across the road, but I'm sorry, I think the Guyra preschool is key critical, and if we leave Guyra long term without a preschool, we will have serious impact on Guyra as a place that is growing. Guyra is growing. Costas are doing more expansion. We know that you only have to go up there like I do on a Saturday often, and you see the buzz inside the town, the main street, with coffee shops open, people filling in and out. We've got to give people vision for the forward. And I'm aware of the challenges, but I think we've been courageous to make the right decision and move forward with approving this DA. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. As seconder to the motion, I would add that this is the officer's recommendation, our staff recommendation. The adoption of the DA today does not commit the council to spending 1 cent. We haven't got the money. The project estimate is $2.5 million, but it gives us options. If we haven't adopted DA sitting on the shelf, as things improve, we've got a deferred commencement as part of this. As things improve, we can consider our options. Now, one of those options might well be that we go to tender for build, own and operate. There's a very good debate to be had about whether council should be in preschools, whether we've got the financial capacity over time to do that. But there are other options. My other concern is that there's 49 children at last report who aren't in a preschool at Guyra who are waiting to get to a preschool. If we let this slip off the table, we'd have nothing. If we adopt it, we've at least got something we can fall back on in a year or two, whenever, so that we don't lose the opportunity. And I think the mums and the dads of those little kiddies expect us to make some provision for the future, even if it's not done at cost of council. So I support the motion. Is there a speaker against? Councillor Gallatley?
I've done a little bit of digging around with this, and this has been a hard one for me because I've supported the staff here up to this stage, and when it probably started we didn't realise we're in dire straits as much as we are with finances, and now that we're getting a little bit of an idea, I think it's our commitment is to the community, and the community for a start, by the time council gets this up and going, 2-3 years, we've only got to look at our airport, what's the name, industrial area, that still hasn't got anything on it. I don't think we're good at doing these developments. We need the private sector to come into it. And I did a bit of digging around, and I found there was a fella who's actually set one up down there, down the coast, down Harwood, and he's done 16 of these in the past. The one that really sticks to mind is up at Tenterfield, and it's called Free Range Kids. My grandchildren went there first off, and that was a bit of a coincidence after I got in touch with him this week. Look, I think that we passed the stage of council doing these things. I think the community deserves a preschool of this same category, but it needs it sooner rather than later. We on council, I don't know how long we've been mucking around with this to get it to this stage. I'm presuming about 2 years, just from my memory. But the private enterprise can get in there, can help these kids out. I'm sure there's somewhere we can find. It doesn't have to be in the centre of town. People will drive, 5 or 10 minutes to get there. It's exactly the same up at Gora. There, you've got Gora town folk that are sending their kids to Ball Blair School because they choose to send them there. This is no different. I don't think it's up to us with our incapability of putting stuff up the way we do. It blows out in prices. And as the General Manager has said before, we haven't got the dough. When will we get money to start investing in this, other than getting, even if we get grant money, it still won't be a goer. It's very hard for me to say this from all the way that it's gone all the way through to what it is, but I think the private sector can do better and work with it, and that's why I'm against it.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I take another speaker, I should remind you that if we refuse the DA, if this motion is knocked out, I will then need a motion to refuse the DA for the following reasons. Okay? That's what we have to do. So I'd like you to think about that, what those reasons might be if we come to that. So is there another speaker for the motion?
I want to speak against it.
You're speaking for?
Yeah, I'm speaking for in the sense that all we're doing is approving a DA. We still haven't got funding for it. And while we're looking for funding, it may be that some other opportunities come up, say a better site or a better way of doing things. And that would be the time to look into these options to make sure that we can get this preschool up and running as soon as possible in the best possible way. But we won't do that by simply knocking back the DA. What we have to do is approve the DA and then find out how to fund it and whether there are better sites or better ways of doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Speaker against Councillor O'Connor.
I have a different reason for opposing this. I don't have a view about whether councils or the private sector should run preschools. I think it very much depends on the location, and I know that this preschool is an incredibly important thing for Guyra, and I believe that the renewal of the preschool, as we're now planning, has probably been due for over 20 years. So I'm in complete support for the director and the staff wanting to push this process forward, and also I totally agree with the two have your say speakers. My concern is, however, that it's not the best location. I was one of those young mums once, it's a long past, that did use the Gyra preschool, and I very much am concerned about the representations that have been to me as a councillor about the location. There are issues about road safety, which I don't think have been adequately answered in relation to Morden Street, and the fact that there's an existing use of that road which includes heavy vehicle testing, and that's an existing use of that street, and it's been approved by the police and heavy vehicle inspection service and other authorities, and it is not the fault of any private operator that that's the street that is going to be shared with the access to the preschool. It's not about safety of little children running around so much as safety of or a conflicting use of that street by vehicles delivering children into the preschool precinct. I've also had representations from other people, and I can back them up myself, that it's just not a suitable aspect because it's very cold on that side of Gyra, especially through winter. And, I understand there's plans to mitigate this to some extent by locating a courtyard and playground and things like that, but still, I just don't think it is the best site. So I'm very much in favour of this proceeding, but not on the site, and that unfortunately the DA is integral to the site, so I don't have much choice, and I regret that in fact the councillors weren't brought in earlier on this, and I'm mindful of the fact that there's still quite a lot of consternation in Gyra. It is a different community to Armidale, in many ways, very admirably different in the sense that everybody feels together, if you like, and there's a greater need, I think, in Gyra to really work with the community about getting things exactly right. It's not really as easy to just go majority rules, get out those that don't like it. So at this stage, whilst I support, I just want a better long-term location for this. It's just much easier. If you've got primary school age kids and preschool age kids, you've got to cross a national freight route, which is the New England Highway, to do both each morning, each afternoon. Why can't we just use some sense and find a site on the eastern side of that national freight route to align with the other children's services in Gyra? I think that's what the community wants. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Speaking against the motion. Looking for a speaker for the motion. Can I go to right of reply? Councillor Bailey.
I've listened with interest to the comments of my colleagues. Firstly, the thought of packing 49 kids who want to go to our preschool to Armidale so they can go to a preschool, I think is totally unacceptable. We've got to try and facilitate the expansion of the current preschool on the proposed site. That's the first thing. I too am not opposed to a private sector operating, and I also have forwarded a person of interest to the General Manager who has just opened a very successful childcare centre in Tamworth, and I think there are people out there who are prepared to build it in consultation. I'm aware that we have applied for federal funding and that has not been knocked back yet, so hopefully our federal member can pull a rabbit out of a hat and get us the money so that we can begin to approve the process. We are approving a DA, and I think the discussions I've had with the director of the preschool is that she is confident the road safety can be managed. Desirous, though it may be, trying to move a preschool across the other side of the highway, does that mean that half the things in Armidale should be moved because we've got some major roads that draw lots of traffic? No, you learn to live with it. I think we've got an opportunity to show leadership to the Gyra community. I think we've got opportunity to show that we have faith in the future and that we are prepared to move. I would have met with probably 100 people over the last 3 months talking about Guyra and Guyra issues, and not once did anyone say don't approve the preschool. Not once did anyone ever say to me don't approve the preschool on the present site. Outstanding former mayors like Robin Jackson wants the preschool built behind the council chambers, and she is an active and a participant in her community and is very much aware of what the community feels. So I would support and encourage you all to vote in favour of the preschool and the DA, and thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. That concludes the debate. Sorry, that concludes the debate. I'm going to put the motion, which is on page 91 of your screen, and as it's a planning matter, we have to have the names recorded. So those in favour of the motion: Councillors O'Brien, Robinson, Bailey and Tiley. Those against: Councillors Morat, Gallatley and O'Connor. Thank you, councillors. We move now.
Could I just make a comment? That
No, it's the debate's concluded.
Yes, it's nothing to do with the debate. It's just saying that maybe we could invite anyone with traffic concerns to discuss it with the traffic committee.
Yeah, we can talk about that later. That's not a bad suggestion, actually. So let's move on to item 10.5, the Malpas Dam Upgrade Assessment Report. I think Councillor Robinson called this. It's on page 168. Councillor Robinson.
I believe Councillor O'Connor was going to move it with an amendment.
Okay. Well, I'll move. Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation?
That Councillor O'Connor was going to.
Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Morat. Is it seconded? Yes. It is seconded. Thank you. Now, I'm hearing there might be an amendment coming up.
I plan to move a very slight amendment to the recommendation, and that was in relation to paragraph C.
C?
Where it says assign delegation to the General Manager to approve and execute a grant offer for funding of the concept design and investigation studies, provided that any co-contribution by council does not exceed the General Manager's existing delegation. The purpose of that is that, as I understand this report, the overall possible cost is around about $1 million, and anyway.
I'm not letting you speak to it just yet.
Fair enough.
But your amendment is to clause C, by addition of the words, provided that any co-contribution
by council does not exceed
the General Manager's delegation.
Existing delegation.
Yep. Yes, which is $500,000.
Whatever it is.
Any co-contribution does not exceed the General Manager's. I mean, obviously, if it did, we'd come straight back to an extraordinary meeting of council very quickly to sort it out.
Yeah,
so
I want that to be very clear, because I think there's an ambiguity at the moment in relation to that particular clause.
Is that amendment acceptable to the mover of the motion? It's accepted by the mover of the motion. And the seconder? Who was the seconder?
Nobody.
Neville. Councillor O'Brien seconded Councillor Morat's motion, and you're happy with the addition of the words under Part C? Right. Do we need to debate this? If not, I propose you do want to debate it. No, just a second. There is a need for debate. Councillor O'Connor, your mic's on.
I'm sorry, no.
There is a need to debate. I'll invite the speaker, the mover, to speak first. No need to speak. Seconder wish to speak? No? Okay.
Just my comment was that I hope all this is going to fit in with the North Coast water strategy, and we haven't had time to look at it properly, but I believe that there are some important issues raised in that document that maybe we have to look through, and also look through our drought management.
I'm going to take that as a question, and I'm going to ask Mr. McDonald whether he'd like to respond.
So it was just to refer this development to...
Yeah, does it comply with the North Coast Water Strategy?
It is consistent with the North Coast Water Management Strategy, because with the raising of the dam wall is not as yet, I believe, mentioned in that strategy, and also to review the release policy.
It's hard to answer that quickly, but if the storage goes up, as we're indicating it to go up, we would then need a change to our water access licence. That water access licence would come under the Macleay water sharing plan, would have to be approved by NRA, and then NRA, as I say, would make any change, would respond to any requests that we make, and then they might even put conditions, further conditions on that. So the framework, I think, is in alignment with what you're saying, but the governing instrument of this is the water sharing plan, and we will be governed by that, and we'll be governed then by what NRA says we can and can't do through our water access licence.
Thanks. All I was wanting to do was make sure those comments were on the table.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't think there's opposition, is there? No, I'll put the motion on your screen with that slight amendment. All those in favour? To the contrary, carried unanimously. My apologies.
Can we continue on sequence and then come back to that last?
If you'd like to. I don't know. Yes.
Request from the boss.
Oh, okay, right. Okay, stenographers are in charge. Let's move on. We'll come back to 10.2. Councillor O'Connor, 10.7, policy for food vans. This is on page 176.
And thank
You're moving 176.
and thank the officer.
Officer's recommendation in 4 parts, yes. Is it seconded somewhere? I think
Yeah, and I'd just like to
Councillor Bailey, I think, yep.
move it and thank the officer for moving on this so quickly, and tell him what delight there is in the community. I get stopped in the shopping centre and other places thanking me for this going forward.
Okay, thank you. I think we can probably put the motion. No opposition. Put the motion. All those in favour. 10.7. Carried. I think it was carried unanimously. 10.11. Public exhibition of road closure, Mills Road. Councillor Bailey.
Just a quick comment. I'm aware that there is, about the road closure, I've already talked to General Scott McDonald about this. There is 2 landholders down there who haven't been consulted yet. I realise they're only just going to public consultation, but I think we should be reaching out to them rather than waiting for them to come to us, so that we can ensure that they're aware and agreeable to what has been proposed.
Mover of the recommendation, you're moving it. Is it seconded somewhere? Councillor Morat. Any opposition? Put the motion. All those in favour. To the contrary, carried. The next one is 10.18. I called it because nobody else did, and we're being asked to either say a yay or nay. My view, as an Indigenous Clarence Vallian, is that we probably can't give blanket support to another council which is having a bun fight with the state deputy premier, and to ban all mining on the Clarence, where there's a lot of country that is not suitable for anything else, would not seem to be appropriate. My suggestion to you is that we just receive a note. Move that way. Seconded somewhere. Councillor Morat. All those in favour. To the contrary. Deep apologies for missing 10.2. Let's call it colloquially the RSL Motel Development request for remission of some fees. Councillor Gallatley has left the room, did not take part in discussion or vote on the matter. Page 129. 129. I was asked by a councillor this morning whether the view of the financial controller was the same. I've spoken with him. It is the same, but he is leaving it to us to make a decision on the matter. Obviously, he has last call, as you'd appreciate. So, looking for a mover of the officer's recommendation. Councillor O'Connor's moving it. Is it seconded somewhere? I'll second it from the chair. Your motion, councillor. Nothing to add? Nor have I. Is there a speaker in opposition?
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment that we reduce the contribution by $100,000 as an ex gratia payment towards the contribution in light of the extensive contributions they have made with regards to the realignment of the sewerage. They gave us land back.
Yeah, you're speaking to it. Let's get the amendment first. The amendment is that the council waive DSP charges to the extent of $100,000.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Call again for a seconder. It's not seconded, so it lapses for want of a seconder. Revert to the original motion. Anybody wish to speak either way? If not, Councillor O'Connor, it was your motion. Do you want to write a reply? I'll put the motion. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation, page 129, raise your hands. It's a planning matter. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favour. 6 in favour. It's carried unanimously. The officer's recommendation to refuse. Thank you. Could someone go and whistle up? Oh, sorry. Get Councillor Callatley. Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Are we done with the 10 series? We are. Terrific. Okay. The 11 series, 11.1, I'm going to leave the room. That doesn't mean it has to be called. Sorry, 11.1 is 210. 11.2, Arts and Cultural Small Grants. 11.3, Animal and Language Revival Program, Office Accommodation. Beg your pardon, Councillor? You're calling 3, Councillor O'Connor. Item 4, reimbursement petrol costs. Item
That'll have to be called, Mr Mayor.
Requires a decision. Okay, so that's call 11.4 is called. 11.5, Public Exhibition Community Engagement Policy. 11.6, Library Collection Development Policy. 11.7, Library Community Information Display Policy. And 11.8, Library Use of and User Code of Conduct Policy. So we can adopt, I'll have to call one because I've got to leave the room and bring you up here, Councillor O'Brien. Other than 11.1, 3 and 4, we adopt the other items by consent. All those in favour? Thank you. It's carried unanimous. Councillor O'Brien.
So all those in favour, do I do that now? All those in favour? Oh, okay. Do we have a mover? Yeah. Move it. A seconder? Okay. Do we do debate? Yeah. Anyone like to speak in favour?
I'll just say I'd recommend we adopt this. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone want to speak against? No? All those in favour then? Okay. Passed. O'Connor.
Very good, thank you, Madam
That's terrible.
Now, settle down, people. We're up to 11.3, called by Councillor O'Connor. Anyone language revival, page 215.
I'd just like to move this and
Councillor O'Connor's moving it. Is there a seconder? Councillor Robinson, thank you. Your motion.
I just, the only reason I called it was that I'd like to draw people's attention to the importance of language revival and congratulate Nuara on doing this and congratulate Council on, it's not a big thing, but it's in terms of cost to us, but it means an enormous amount, I think, to that hard-working language group. And, you know, I look forward, I'm glad it's only 12 months though, because I think it's a trial and, yeah, just to endorse this proposal.
Thank you,
it's one way
Councillor.
we can help. Yep.
I think that we would unanimously support those comments. Any opposition? Put the motion. All those in favour, to the contrary, carried. 11.4, officer's recommendation is the council determine its position. The carrier is seeking $300 for his fuel costs in that recent delivery of hay. Is there a mover to do so? Councillor O'Connor, thank you. Seconded. Councillor Gladley, is there any opposition? Put the motion. All that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, there's just, if council want to support it, there's just a process I'll need to go through in terms of giving public notice as part of the Section 356.
Under those circumstances, having to give a month's notice, I'll make it a donation out of my mayoral allowance for $300, and therefore we don't need a motion. Okay, let's move on. This man's been waiting patiently. Right, so we are now up to the 12 series of committee reports. Can I call these? You want to talk to, okay, well 12.1 you want to talk to it. 12. I think we're fine with that. 12.3 Economic Development Committee. And 12.4 the Sports Council. So 12.1 called only, so we'll adopt by consensus the other three committee minutes. Councillor Gladley and looking at Councillor Morat, thank you. All those in favour, to the contrary, carried. So to 12.1, Councillor O'Brien, page 229.
The Community Wellbeing Committee made a recommendation to Council, and in light of the community representation made to me on this issue, I think it's important that we bring it to Council's attention rather than just brush over it. 2 months ago, there was 500 people gathered in the mall in support of Ed March to Adam Marshall's office in support of in support of the rallies against sexual assault of women in the workplace. Some of those inquiries are still going on right up until this day, and the current inquiry into the rape of a former staff member who addressed the crowd of hundreds of thousands of people, thousands of people in Canberra, but as part of a group of hundreds of thousands of people all over Australia, spoke about how the system is broken in terms of protecting women in the workplace against sexual assault, sexual abuse and sexual harassment. The certain motions were put to councils all around Australia, and there was one put to, were asked to endorse that the petitions were sent to their local members, and the representations from the 500 people who marched on that day asked me to make a representation to this council to recognise and endorse the demands that they made in a letter of support to the state and federal members.
Councillor O'Brien, I've mistakenly not asked you to move a motion before you spoke, but are you adopting the recommendation
I'm
from the
asking that
committee?
the recommendation that the council recognise and endorse the demands in the March for Justice.
You're moving what's printed on page 229?
396.
Oh, well, the minutes be noted.
Oh, okay.
And that the following recommendations be considered by council.
Oh, okay.
You're moving
Sorry,
that?
yes.
Thank you. I just get a seconder to formalise things, Councillor Robinson. Continue, Councillor.
And the petition itself is very relevant to local council as well, because they do ask for the state and federal members to increase funding for support for things like the women's shelter, counselling support service for survivors of gendered violence, to lend support for housing affordability programs, and also things that we have started but will need more help on, such as lighting and CCTV cameras in the mall and in various other parts around Armidale. Everyone should have the list of demands there, but really these have been put to Adam Marshall, who was quite positive about representing these, and Barnaby Joyce, I don't know what he said about it, but the representation from this group has asked that the council endorse this list of demands to support protection of women protection of women against workplace violence, workplace sexual harassment, and workplace sexual abuse, and that I ask this council if they could please support this petition, as many other councils have done throughout New South Wales and Australia, to support so that various institutions here can be supported in supporting women. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor.
Let's ensure that we talk about the Armidale region rather than just Armidale, because Gyra wants CCTV.
I don't see it as a point of order, but you're acknowledging. Councillor Robinson, did you wish to speak?
No, I'll thank.
Okay. No opposition. I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We now move to, there's no matters of an urgent nature, I hope. Questions on notices as printed. Before we move into confidential session, councillors, I wish to, on your behalf, say farewell to Director of Organisational and Corporate Services, Marissa Racco-Malera, who I think this is her last working day with us. She was here when we all came back from purgatory, and she has been a standout in terms of her support, particularly to me personally, but to all of us. Her guidance, her professionalism are all exceptional. And you are the right person at the right time. And we sincerely thank you for all that you've done, and we wish you all the very best for the future, and we hope you might have a little conviviality with us at the conclusion of the meeting. But thank you again. Back to business briefly. We now need to move into confidential session. We have one item to deal with, and that's item 15.1.
I move that we move into Committee of the Whole, closed.
Yes, I've got to get this right. Moving into the Committee of the Whole, Councillors O'Connor and Robinson. It's put the motion, those in favour, the contrary carried. We're now in Robinson are moving that the recommendations of closed session be adopted, and that concludes
Good to do.